I would like to welcome our three wonderful panelists today. Ladies first, introducing Penny, Director of Positive Futures Australia, a highly experienced executive across commercial and the not-for-profit sectors, developing mutually beneficial partnerships for a wide variety of organizations that she has worked with over a period of time. I think I caught up with you, Penny, quite a number of years ago, and really it's wonderful to have you on today's webinar. Then on to my friend and colleague Adam Posner, who is the CEO and founder of the Point of Loyalty. Point of Loyalty provides specialist customer loyalty and retention strategies for facilitation and mentoring for brands focused on retaining and growing the lifetime value of their customers. And then last but not least, Brian Walker. Really thrilled to have you, Brian, and thank you for making the time for today. Brian is the CEO and founder of Retail Doctor. Retail Doctor is a top 50 global retail influencer. Brian is an author and media commentator who specializes in transforming insight-driven strategy into award-winning implementation. So we really have three strong candidates here as panelists covering the three key areas of our topic today. But folks, before we kick into the webinar itself, I'd like to play a little intro to Points for Purpose itself. So if I can just hit this play button, it only goes for 60 seconds and it'll give you a little background as to what Points for Purpose is about. Here we go.
They call it the new normal. Millions of businesses are closing and no one has been left untouched. Supporting economic recovery and building community are now more important than ever. Loyalty programs can make a real difference. Yet with over 3.8 billion loyalty memberships, people are active in less than half. At the same time, charities are struggling to source vital fundraising. There is a solution. Introducing Points for Purpose, the loyalty platform that gives back. By bringing brands, businesses, and charities together, customers can now shop, spend, earn, and donate their loyalty points to the charities they love, turning points into purpose and shoppers into donors. Points for Purpose engages customers, supports charities, and in doing so, does good in the world at the time we need this most. Points for Purpose, the loyalty platform that gives back.
Okay. Thanks for sitting through our short 60-second intro. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Today's webinar will run for 60 minutes. As we go into the conversations that we're going to run through today, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat. Steve Dart, who is our loyal webinar supporter and LinkedIn guru, will be curating those questions, and we're happy to deal with them when we hit the Q&A section very, very shortly. We're going to kick off today, if I may, with a question to you, Brian. And the question goes like this. What does customer engagement look like for retailers in 2023? What do you see as the essential elements of achieving customer cut-through in our current landscape? Hoping you can kick that conversation off.
Maybe, thanks, Ivan, and welcome everyone. I think as a starting point, if we talk about the Australian retail sector, we're currently travelling at about 410 billion, thereabouts, of which about 16% is online. But what we increasingly have for an assembly of offers, if you like, is a retailer that's increasingly omni-channel. That is, that they have a distribution network of physical stores, and it's supported with a unified commerce platform, if you like, enabling online purchases, transactions, and enabling conversations with customers 24/7 for the more sophisticated and the more engaged. Now, retail, as you know, is going through a process of transformation. And we're seeing the growth of marketplaces, for example. We're seeing the growth of retailers really zeroing in on this idea of a customer that is part of their tribe. I think that's probably the first term that I'd use. Part of their community, part of their tribe, part of their relevance. And so we're seeing marketing teams really zeroing and moving from the herd to the hunter in their thinking. Personalization is one of the big trends that we talk about, the personalized relevant offer. So what does customer engagement mean to cut through all this complexity? What it means in my mind is this, if you like, successful integration of a customer into being part of a retailer's tribe, a community, for which there are emotional drivers, that I belong to this community, that it speaks in a relevance and a language to my lifestyle, to my tastes. My fellow tribe members belong to this community, be it bike riding, mountaineering, whatever it might be. And that I've got an emotional connection to that brand, to that story. Now that's, in my mind, true customer engagement. In fact, I'm even at the point of being an advocate for it. I will tell my friends Penny and Adam about it, and I love the experience. And the words I'm starting to use are really emotional drivers. On the flip side of the coin, I visited 17 retailers, so 7 retailers on the weekend, just shopping. 6 of those retailers offered me an invitation to join their database, their loyalty program, as they called it. Now, these people don't know me. I'm not part of their tribe, but I still get the same offer. Now, the question in my mind is, how do we cut through all, I'm sort of giving some clues, and I'll be very interested in Adam and Penny's view here, but how do we successfully cut through this noise such that we're not instructing our teams to work on a brand and deploy a brand that is mechanistic in nature? Because unless I'm emotionally connected in the manner in which I've talked about, in some way, shape, or form, it's not loyalty per se. It's rewarding me for spending money over that business in a one-off transaction over another transaction. Let me give you an example. One retailer we know too very well, for example, has a loyalty program with 65% loyalty membership, but they pay $8 million a year in diluted margin to keep that number. Now, is that an engaged customer? I'll be very interested in Adam or Penny's view. But in my mind, that is a customer that's shopping them purely on price discounting. Now, if we look at the Black Friday sales for a moment, of which it's about $6.3 billion in this country was spent. It was a record number, but the average discount was 25%. If we've got retailers out there with 50% loyalty expressed through this discount mechanism, my opening hypothesis would be, I'm not sure that they're loyal. I think that they might visit and they might look at that retailer's price assembly and offer and pricing strategy and product strategy, but are they actually really loyal? Would they wear that brand on their clothing and so forth? And in fact, Adam, I might ask you just to say good morning and a quick thought on that topic.
Gee, Brian, you got my heart palpitating. I was writing down a few thoughts and I was busting to jump in, but I was waiting for you to take a breath.
Here's the break.
Well, the first thing is I'm very disappointed that you only got offered 6 out of 7 loyalty programs to join. I was hoping it would be 7 out of 7.
So was I.
So, there's room for improvement everywhere.
Yes.
Just on your comment on emotional connection and I don't want to get into the definition of loyalty, but and what you experience in these hyper sales orientated times, the Friday, the Cyber Monday, everything sell. Clearly you're going in and might be only transacting once transaction, but in time, the loyalty program is an asset to try and get you back and create a longer term engagement. So if you just bought on a once-off price because that's why you're in, then absolutely that'll erode margin and you'll be like many retailer databases that I see, 80% are one times transaction, 20%, you know, the 2, 3, 5, 100 times. So there's transactional loyalty, there's emotional loyalty, there's all those elements. So to jump back into what you said, I do love the fact that you talk about tribes. I'm not sure every brand has, and Penny might be able to add onto this, has that capacity to build an emotional connection. Some are very transactional, but some go into points of passion. Some go into, you know, lifestyle where you actually are very connected. Doesn't mean you shouldn't start aiming for a tribe. So I guess that's my little feedback into some of the commentary that you shared about, you know, today being what I don't know what today's Tuesday. It's the most probably terrible Tuesday. Buy everything that you can.
And so you make a great comment, you know, and I should say right from the front, and I will pass to Penny, you know, we are absolute advocates of this understanding of the psychology of a buyer. So for us, it's the limbic methodology, the limbic mind. And we know firsthand really what some of those innate drivers are. So without talking a lot about this thing called limbic, it's easy to look up, and different people have different models of understanding. But when the work of why we buy, and that sort of literature came out 10 years ago, it was really talking about, to understand buyer behavior, you need to understand buyer personalities, you need to understand how the brain works. And I'm sure we'll move into that space in this discussion. Now, in the absence of that, and in the absence of a relevant and purposeful brand, and by the way, Kmart is a relevant and purposeful brand. It's not saying it's just linked to emotionally obvious brands. In the absence of that, I think I would argue that customer engagement is a somewhat transitory experience. Now, I think Adam's going to take us into the space that will say, well, that's a tiered response. And I could see that logic as well. Penny, your thoughts on some of my opening comments around, you know, building of the tribe?
Yeah, I found it really interesting. In fact, it actually took me back to my first career in advertising, where we talked about how do brands connect with people. And you're always looking for that emotional connection, because why is it relevant to me? So I think, you know, that's never gone away in terms of how you position your brand. And over time, by building that relationship, hopefully that ensues loyalty, or what I would call trust as well. Yes. And trust is one of the hardest things to actually establish and maintain. There's a great, I think it's an old Dutch saying, that trust comes in on foot, but it leaves on horseback. So it takes a really long time to build. But as we can see recently, with a lot of interesting challenges of major brands in Australia, the trust that you've built over long periods of time can easily depart if you're not doing the right thing as well by your customer, and continue to do the right thing by your customer. So credibility and trust are very much intrinsic in all of that.
And so trust is an emotional characteristic, isn't it? It's an attribute, and it's an attribute of the human relationship, I think I'd argue, that we trust, inherently we trust people to do the right thing, and the brand is a personification of that.
I think what you're talking about, Penny, I think what you're talking about is walking the talk. Okay, and making sure that it's a strategic approach rather than, you know, just a kind of knee-jerk thing, that it is something that is embedded into the way the business operates. But that's a perfect segue, folks, to actually take the conversation to you, Adam, about how loyalty programs do drive profitable outcomes, and wondering if you can outline some of the do's and don'ts that we've learned as we close off 2023 and head into 2024. You know, is there anything about what's been going on in the more recent time that perhaps folks on the webinar today may not be aware of and should be when it comes to loyalty, effective loyalty practice and implementation?
Yeah, I mean, look, lots to talk about there. And I guess the first do is make sure that the 6 loyalty programs that invited Brian to join, to make sure they look him up and, you know, build that relationship with him into the future. But more importantly, how do their programs drive profitable outcome? Well, that is the millions of dollar question. So I'll keep it simple. Profitable by definition is revenue in versus costs out. So a loyalty program is a business entity in itself, although it should be. It should have its own P&L, its balance sheet, and its cash flow. But it should focus on incremental revenue. You know, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Polly. If people, you've got to really drive incremental change in behavior rather than just give rewards to people who are spending anyway. It's the correlation causation conversation, which many loyalty program practitioners talk about, which is, yes, your loyalty program member is more profitable than a non-member. And so they should be, because they're already spending more and more often. That's why they join the program, to get the benefits. So, but does the program cause a change in behavior and that incremental? So, you know, that's the first profitable conversation, is segment your base, make sure you know who your low values, your medium values, your high values are. And then all customers are not, or all members are not created equal, because you've got to, but some are more equal than others. So you've got to make sure that you're not just throwing, you know, points and perks at people that are already at their max level. I mean, you certainly got to recognize and reward them, but where's the opportunity to grow low value, medium value? So that's the first point. The second is more about additional revenue. So loyalty programs are now a retail media asset. They are an owned asset. And, you know, you've got, in many cases, suppliers and partners who can be accessed for what I call OPMs, other people's money. They can support and provide inputs to rewards and benefits for mutual benefit, so that they can, you know, reach the base, which is 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 14 million, and sponsor rewards and opportunities. And hence the retailer who owns that asset has a new revenue income stream that loyalty programs are very, very well known for. So the word profitable, when you ask the question, lots of layers to that, Ivan. A couple, three that I gave there in terms of, you know, where and how you drive those profitable outcomes. What was the other question?
So the second bit was some of the do's and don'ts that we've learned that might be more recent, that folks that might have loyalty programs in the market need to be aware of. Some of the tipping points, Adam, that, you know, just you are seeing based on your helicopter view that is quite unique to Point of Loyalty, that others may benefit from in taking their what may be flatlining loyalty programs to another level.
Yeah, I like the comment about flatlining and or to another level, but we've got to get very clear on definitions and context here, because that word engagement, when I heard and read that, and Brian, you know, gave a good description of what it, you know, I've actually got sort of 5 ways of defining engagement. Sometimes people talk it as a transactional engagement, you know, they actually scanned or tagged and bought something. Then there's actually communication engagement. I've heard, by definition, people opening their emails, you know, that's a form of engagement. Then there's advocacy engagement, people referring and telling others, or on social media saying how great this brand is, you know, that's a kind of engagement as well. There might be, in Penny's corner, you know, the social purpose engagement, the donation, the supporting the brand, going volunteering. You know, there's lots of layers to the word engagement, but most of us know it as a transactional interaction. So what's going on, I think, at the moment is a rush on redemption. Programs which are giving financial benefits are being hit big time by their members. Because why? It's the time of the year, it's the world we're living in, and so there's a huge redemption rush on programs which have a financial layer to it right now. So that people, you know, a very well-known brand called Woolies Everyday Rewards talks about they've got a bank for Christmas proposition, which has had a huge engagement, people saving up for their Christmas and, you know, working towards using that this time of the year. So what's happening right now is, you know, we're in this moment of get as much financial benefit, but by the same token, how can brands now with programs lift that to that cause, that purpose, that greater than just the money, more than money, and continue a conversation with their members. Anything on that, Penny, that you could perhaps add to that?
Yeah, I think you're I mean, obviously the current situation with the economic pressures that we're facing across the board is putting a real pinch on people. And it's interesting when you look at it in context of donations and giving in Australia generally. I mean, it's sizable, the amount that people donate every year. It's somewhere in excess of $13 billion a year, which is incredible. But what's interesting when you look at that is that the actual number of donations is decreasing. So what we're seeing is while it's growing year on year, the total, it's actually the higher end large gifts that are pushing the number up, but people don't necessarily have the means or the available funds to be giving as much as they might have done in the past. So being able to enable people to support an organisation they want without it maybe not coming directly out of their own pocket is a great way for you to help drive their personal sense of purpose as well in terms of wanting to give.
Yeah, carry on that. Ivan, did you want to jump in? Sorry.
Look, I want to come back to you, Brian, and no names, no pactorals. You started off talking about a situation of a program that cost a lot of money. I think you mentioned $8 million.
Sure.
So my question, under the big P for profitable aspect, and this is one for you, Brian, as much as you, Adam, and back to you, Penny, how do we measure the profitable impact of a program? The impression I got from what you were saying is, yes, the engagement is there, but there's a significant cost to that. What's the period of time that an average retailer would look to see that break even kick in and to see the profit come out of a program like this?
Well, the volume offsets in that particular example are 5-6 times to get back to that level of revenue at a full margin in that particular example.
Right.
And listening to Adam, and always enjoyable, always very relevant. I do think to myself, what should every business or retail in this sense have a loyalty program? Because there's part of me that thinks if you're sharply differentiated, if you've got great product, you've got consistently great service, you do a job that other people can't do, you will drive loyal traffic. Now, if you're part of a homogeneous whitewash, where it's all about price, convenience, range, and this sort of move to the middle ground and even lower into the discount value chain, and then you're saying, well, actually, I'm going to dilute my margins to attract more people to spend money with me, who I question fundamentally in this example are truly loyal. Where's my business value? So if I think about this retail asset, which I agree with, if I think about Myer with 75% plus on their loyalty programs, if I think about Qantas with the valuation of its loyalty program, they're all highly transactional points. And I wonder how much stick there is between customer and business. And maybe, Adam, that's the first question, if I may, is should every retailer have a loyalty program? You're disappointed that I didn't get 7 out of 7?
No. Well, the answer is why? Why do you have a program in the first place? So it's not should everyone have one, is know why. And I do know brands who don't, come to me and said, I want a program. In the end, there's a number of reasons why they don't go ahead. So it's not for everyone, absolutely. But there are 6 key questions that I'd suggest everyone ask themselves. If they haven't got a program, why? And I've got another thought on those brands that are what I call everyday low price, who a while ago said to me, oh, we don't do programs because we're everyday low price. And now they're parts of either a coalition or they're actually building their own. So they must have another reason why, including the word data. But let's move on. So the six key things they need to ask themselves is, and Penny will love this one, purpose. But purpose in this case, not purpose for social greater cause. And maybe I should put planet there, purpose planet. But purpose meaning why a program. What are your core objectives? Purpose meaning why, okay? Priority. I always ask, so of all the strategic growth opportunities in your retail business, where would a loyalty program fit? Priority number 2. Number 3, program proposition versus brand promise. Does a program support the brand and its essence and its promise? That's the 3rd P. The 4th is platform and tech, and that whole omni-channel conversation you brought up, Brian. The unified customer data point. The 5th is people, and people being your team and your customers, and the people around you. So you've got to know, is it right for your people and for your customers? And the last one, which everyone loves, is profit. Does it serve the commercials? So there's 6 P's to answer, and if you answer them all correctly, you deserve a program, Brian.
So 6 out of 7 retailers that I saw all had a loyalty program. So they met that criteria or part thereof, but I wasn't interested. I wasn't relevant to that loyalty program. So what's interesting in that journey, I suspect, is ultimately, how do I build a loyalty program to purpose, to community, to tribe, that provides me a financial benefit to the organization, builds an asset to the balance sheet that we've touched on, and I don't have to dilute earnings or shareholder value in the journey.
Who's the question to?
I'm happy.
$64 million question.
Because I think that's at the crux of this. We've got businesses rightfully looking to gain advantage over other businesses, but that advantage dissipates without your points, Adam, around purpose, relevance, and so forth. But I do think there's a lot of short-term economic dilution being given away to offset some fundamental essentials in retail, differentiated offer, and the things that I've touched on. And as product offering gets more and more homogenized, the other day I went looking for you'll be impressed to hear this, I went looking for a little bit of a business fitness equipment, and I was offered a loyalty program associated with the hardware chain. Now, we've got to deal with this rising marketplace, the online marketplaces. 20% of every e-commerce dollar is spent with Amazon in this country currently. So how do retailers utilize the right loyalty program, in this example today, to really cut through all this, where price is not the axiomatic lever? And then I think we get somewhere near true loyalty around trust, safety. Sure, there's pecuniary benefits. And in sale time, it'll be discount. But in other times, it's belonging to something bigger than myself with pride. Penny, I'm interested in your thoughts on some of those comments.
Yeah, I think that very much sort of leads into what are consumers' expectations? Because when they want to purchase a product, I think probably more than anything, there's a standard expectation that you're going to give me a good product and good quality service. But are you a company that acts responsibly? Are you a company that acts ethically? It's beyond the obvious first entry points of that decision. And people are looking now a lot more deeper in terms of who will I spend my money with or align myself with as well, or become part of that tribe, to your point, Brian, as well. So really thinking about what are customers thinking. And it's very interesting. There was a study done, released this year by Cavill & Co. called The Conscious Consumer. She's been doing it for many years, but it really validates the fact that 3 out of 4 Australians actually think that corporates should be helping solve societal problems. That should be part of what their job is in terms of what they do, apart from good products and good service. And they actually believe they've got a greater chance of helping solve problems than government, because they've got the means and they've got the skills behind them as well. However, the flip side is that many don't actually think they're doing enough about it, and that their only focus is on profit. So it's not surprising to hear that 7 out of 10 Australians think that all that companies care about is profit. So to this whole conversation is, when you're building customer engagement and loyalty, how are you demonstrating it's not just about profit? what are you doing in terms of the way that you act, and being able to demonstrate that potentially through the support that you provide to organizations in supporting our planet and our people. I can keep going on my section because it's something.
No, we're about to kick in, Penny, to your section. I just wanted to add, there's a fellow in our audience today, Kane Costello, and he would remember we used to work with an Irishman who used this wonderful term called additive. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with the term. He had a very strong Irish accent.
It's fairly self-explanatory, I suspect, but yeah.
And I can't remember, Brian, if it was you or Adam talking about Tuesdays. If I run a restaurant and my restaurant is relatively empty on a Tuesday, what a latent opportunity that is. Okay, 100% of nothing is nothing. Last time I looked. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, Adam, a lot of what you do in the initial strategy phase is how can we bring additive components to the loyalty program that will provide a benefit to the customer and ultimately put a bum on a seat that wouldn't have been there otherwise. If the place is chock-a-block Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, there's no point in cannibalizing that which is in play. But if that additive element can be brought into the conversation, I think that's where the value, that's where the profitability kicks in, both for a profitable outcome for the consumer, whatever that might be, to incentivize them to come in on Tuesday rather than Saturday night when the place is booked out. And ultimately to the business to drive revenue where otherwise that wouldn't have been there. And I think that example's an interesting one and applies to every business, Brian.
I think it does. And I really enjoyed listening to Penny. And my mind was turning to this business that has all its hygiene factors in place. That there's an absolute given standard of expectations that a business will have, that it will act socially responsibly and so forth. The other thing I sort of wanted to touch on was what I'd call brand profit. Now, this is a very retail lens, but bear with me. We also, through our operations division, have done a lot of mystery shopping, customer satisfaction stuff over the years. And I can share with you that on average, about 65% of respondents don't say farewell, don't offer a database to date, other than the experience that I personally had. But in other words, in the sort of Jan Carlson moment, this moments of truth. So the business has engineered a particularly attractive and relevant loyalty program, but at the moment of truth, it's not delivered. And that often does more to damage a brand than we give credit for. So in my mind, a loyalty program is a full customer value proposition that requires feedback loops and monitoring. Now, uptake of the loyalty program is obviously a key metric, but so too is understanding the moments of truth and where training comes into play, coaching, mentoring, leadership comes into play. And often we see loyalty programs in businesses that do tend to look at, yes, we've grown 63% in our loyalty uptake. Aren't we doing a terrific job? But in the battlefield, there's a corrosive effect if we haven't got that full value proposition in play. And so it's not just an exercise for the boardroom. It's definitely one for the generals in the field to be leading.
Spot on, Brian.
With passion and with purpose.
Yeah.
And relevance to the internal customer.
Very interesting.
And often that's overlooked.
Yes.
I'm sure, Brian and Adam, you're familiar with how much harder it is to acquire a new customer than it is to retain a customer as well. So let alone an uptick, it's about the investment that you need to get new customers versus keeping ones that you had.
Absolutely. And there's no doubt, and I'll turn to Adam in a moment, there is great evidence to support loyalty programs that tick all these boxes. Whether we need as many in as many forms, I'm not sure. But I think Adam touched on earlier about the tier one, if I understood it correctly, that really get it and do a wonderful job with it. Maybe, Adam, that's a nice segue to the ones that work well and the ones that possibly haven't worked as well.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on the worked well versus don't work well. You know, I
Full
wish I
word.
could see the balance sheets of every loyalty program that's out there, whether they'd share them with me, their profit and losses and their things. But for a couple of points that you made, and Penny will support this from some conversations I've had with her around, you know, that whole value chain. And we've all had some furious discussions around a brand called Grilled. And, you know, their proposition in their loyalty program is 8 and donate. Now, I know for a fact, having spoken to them many times, is their whole team's very engaged. Their customers are engaged in different ways. Yeah, we know we've got the bottle top piece, and they've given $7 million to 30,000 causes according to their websites. But they've also given 155,000 meals to the hungry. So,
Yes.
you know, the program, and that's one example, and there's many others, that has a proposition that serves a purpose, a community purpose. It solves a problem in feeding the hungry. And everyone from their team, their volunteer, right up into the CEO, all buy into this the proposition. So right through the value chain, everywhere through the loyalty program. I don't know how profitable the program is, Brian. We might have to ask them, but I'm sure it is.
Well, it's heartwarming, isn't it? I mean, we'd be stones to not be moved emotionally by this. And I share entirely. I know that the CEO of Grilled himself serves meals to the homeless one night a week. You know, this stuff is legendary. It's folklore. And we follow that because it's so purposeful.
Look,
and I think you make the point nicely.
They do walk the walk. If you walk into their store, which I have done many times, and there's a sign up on the wall that says, we feed seaweed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Penny, there's an environmental aspect to this, to the way they practice as well, for the non-vegetarians amongst us.
They've meat-free Mondays.
Absolutely. You know, being socially responsible should not be siloed to one aspect. I think you either are or you're not. And that kind of is the perfect conduit, Penny, to pose the question to you, if I may, to just drill down a little bit to something that's very confused out there right now. What does it mean to be socially responsible? And how can businesses embed this into their everyday communication programs? Is this just a dream, or is this something that is doable in 2023-24?
Oh, I think it's very doable, and I think a lot of companies are actively on this journey in lots of different ways. I don't think there's necessarily one way suits all. I agree with you, Ivan. It can be confusing because there's a lot of different terminology out there, and what does it all mean? And a lot of it actually means the same thing, but rebranded or rephrased. So whether we're talking about social impact today, what does that actually even mean? And to me, that's an outcome. An impact is an outcome. So are you, through your behaviors and your actions and the products that you sell or the services that you offer, are you creating a positive or a negative impact on society and our planet? And companies and organizations can do this in many different ways. It can be anything from a cause marketing type initiative, which I would say is much more of a lighter touch potentially, versus maybe a Grilled, which is a much more deep integration. So they've identified what it means to them to act responsibly, and they've thought about it in every level of their business and rolled it out, even to the point that they want to have green energy in their stores. So they really think about every possible level and make sure that they've got a program that addresses it. So to your earlier point, Ivan, it is about walking the walk in that scenario. And we are seeing that the customer is expecting a lot more. So back to my earlier point, they want to see companies doing good in the world, and they want to see how you're helping our planet and lots of different causes out there as well. And particularly younger generations, we're finding that even more so. And there is up to something like 30% will actively switch brands if they can see that you're supporting a cause or a community that they have some level of affinity to. So there is real action out there. So companies think about it in different ways. And it might well be that you've got a program which is in your corporate social responsibility where you're donating a percentage of your profit and you support community programs as a result of that. The 1% club they like to talk about. Atlassian is a great example of that, where billions of dollars is actually segued into great causes. And they focus on certain things where they can create the greatest impact. But I would say that probably if you're thinking about going into this journey, there's a couple of key things that you really have to think about if you really want to build credibility and trust over the long term. And firstly, it does come down to alignment. So, Adam, you had the question earlier, why would you do a loyalty program? Well, why would you invest in wanting to create social impact? So how does that actually connect to your purpose? What makes sense to your company? You want to make sure that it's aligning to your vision, your mission, and hopefully what your purpose is as well. And then how can you ladder that all the way through into your products and services to show that you are actually actively taking a stance on this? So that's the first one. Think about alignment. How does it actually fit? Why does it make sense? And then what should you be doing around that? And whatever you choose to do, be authentic with that. Today, everyone is hypersensitive. There's a woke term for nearly everything these days. Greenwashing, pinkwashing, you name it. So customers are very savvy and they are watching what you do and they want to see that it is genuine and it is authentic and want to see that you actually are improving social outcomes. And there's great measures and tools out there now that you can actually quantify that. So if you're investing in community, you can see what level of impact you're actually creating. So being authentic is probably the second one. And then the third one is really about sustainability. It's not a dip your toe in and dip out. It's over the long term. If you're really going to build credibility and trust, you've got to be able to do it for periods of time. It shouldn't be seen as a luxury or a peripheral or just a marketing gimmick, to be honest. It's about investing for the long term. What are your thoughts on that, Adam and Brian? I'd love to hear.
Adam, please.
I think everything you say makes a lot of sense, and as you indicated, it does start right at the beginning. At almost at the top, which is what is this stand in terms of the greater good versus profit, and what does that really look like, and how do they execute? Because there's nothing that is worse than people saying something and not doing something. So how do they execute that through the day-to-day, through their people, whether it's a retailer or not a retailer? I think, and the authenticity element, we can read through the BS very quickly.
Interesting.
And so I really like this commentary, Penny, because it really rounds up some of these earlier comments. I think, therefore, when I walk back into that business as a customer and I'm offered a discount for purchasing something, non-sale just generally, or I'm offered points that just contribute to whatever it might be, is that a loyalty program? Now, because I think we're saying it's more deeply embedded to be successful, that it has more attributes, that it must mean something, but it ticks the economic definition of a loyalty program to some degree, and it'll make assumptions about economic performance based on that. And some of that will be very accurate and some of it won't be. Is it a loyalty program or is it a repeat visitation for discounting offer? Adam.
Good question.
Well, the definition of a loyalty program in my world is a planned structure of recognition, rewards, and benefits that enhances a customer's life in exchange for, usually it's data, but in exchange for a change of behavior, building a sense of belief, and a greater sense of belonging, the 3 Bs. So that's my definition. What the structure of the program looks like and how it's executed, Brian, does look on the outside in many cases transactional. Recognition and reward with benefits. So it's more about building out the other layers. There are 6 currencies to a program. Transactional layer, Brian, which you've been talking a lot about. Experiential layer, adding more than money. It's more about moments of memory,
Yes.
surprise, delight, joyalty, as I call it.
Yes.
Utility is the 3rd currency, making my life easy, saving me time, giving me a digital receipt, whatever that might look like. The 4th currency is show me you know me. Use the data in a personal and relevant way. Don't just spam and throw stuff at me. Clearly, that's one of the main objectives there, and personal. Then there's choice, which is Ivan's proposition. Give me a choice to choose. Should I take the money or should I give it to a cause? Should I have the birthday or $5 offer or should I donate it? Give me a choice. Choice is a critical currency. And the 6th currency, and these are in no way an order of preference, by the way. Every brand will use them differently. And the 6th currency is social, community, and connect me with a cause and or a community. Now, not every brand can do that, as I mentioned early on, Brian, but those 6 currencies is what a proposition is built on. And every brand will need to look at those 6 currencies, find the relevance for them when they're building a program.
I really like this. I think it's a great dissertation, a great checklist. Could I audaciously suggest a 7th?
Yes, please.
That they're fundamentally good at what they purport to do. So Grilled
Yes.
make great burgers. Patagonia make great clothing.
Oh, look, you've got to be brilliant at the basics. What's your promise? A loyalty program is not a Band-Aid, Brian. A loyalty program augments the proposition. So if your proposition is not great, your basic reason for being, be careful about a program.
And I think they're wise words. And so if I think about, the loyalty programs for me for one of us for buying toasters and hairdryers and what have you from a reseller brand, I think, well, there's my repeat visitation based on economic short-term benefit, but it doesn't give me a sense of tribalism or community or belonging. And frankly, they don't do it any better than their competitors because it's a toaster. So, I still want to I think we're getting nicely clear on how to start to really think through this topic, to both of your credit.
And I think it's when all things are equal. I'm probably just rephrasing what you're saying. If price is equal, quality is roughly equal, what's your differentiator?
Exactly.
How do you actually, and that's where that connection point comes into hopefully tapping into something that we know that consumers are looking for and want to be able to be a participant of, is creating greater good in the world.
Absolutely.
So
and the lovely, sorry, yes.
I remember
and the lovely comment earlier around retail asset and the recurring value of the asset, the multiple that's applied to it. It must, by definition, be a greater, even if you enter goodwill into this discussion, a greater asset value by meeting all this criteria than a series of economic forecasts that are predicated on margin dilution and not an awful lot more, and offset in volume. So it is an interesting part of this journey on how investors invest and think about this from a funding perspective as well.
At the end of the day, customer engagement and changes in customer engagement have to be measured. I'm sure everyone agrees with that. And we welcome, I think, Adam, the bean counters into the conversation. This is not a never, never. This is something, even incorporating social impact. At the end of the day, we welcome measurement. This is one of the few marketing tools out there that can be measured to the dollar. And I think if one goes into a loyalty program on the basis that, look, it's not a promotion, it's a program, it's not a quick fix. But at the end of the day, the gain has got to be worth the pain, and that measurement process has got to be part of the methodology. And I know, Adam, that's a big part of what you do in the initial phase, so that there are no surprises. There may be disappointment, which requires a tweak, but at the end of the day, one of the great things about this is that it can be measured and should be measured. And one of the other things you've said to me, Adam, is that loyalty is an outcome. It's not a prerequisite. It's an outcome to what you are doing, and that can be done in many, many ways. I'm just looking, folks, as we move to the final section of this. There are a few questions, one of which, Penny, is to you about generational change and social responsibility and generational change. And if you don't mind, just rather quickly, what that means in terms of social responsibility and why that may be even more relevant today.
And I think, you know, it's fair to say that across all generations, there's a level of expectation that companies need to act responsibly and ethically. I think where you get slightly different shifts is probably in the younger generations now. They have very much the global view that they want companies to support the global big issues. Whereas maybe our generations, the sort of the Gen Xers or so, probably would gravitate slightly more to the local issues. Not to say that both aren't important, but just in terms of priority. And the biggest difference is now is that people take the time to look up companies and see what they're doing to actually help influence what their choices will be. So you actually have to be able to back it up in terms of being able to demonstrate it. It doesn't mean it has to be part of a marketing program. It means that you can, if you want to go on their website, you can see what they do, how they go about their business, and what impact are they trying to make. So people are a lot more diligent and a lot more skeptical as well at the same time.
There's a question that's come in, thanks, Penny, that deals with Qantas. There's not a question, to my surprise, that's come in dealing with Optus. I think the greatest opportunity to show what you care about as a business is when you are down, when something has gone wrong, and how you respond to that. And I know, Adam, you and I have spoken about that as well. And I think part of the criticism of Optus has been not so much that there was an outage, but how they responded to that. And I think that, people are pretty savvy today. The Google generation can do their comparative shopping in less than a millisecond. And there's no doubt as we wrap up this conversation that understanding who your MVP, your most valuable customer is, and developing strategies to engage with them, to retain them for longer. No point in having new customers coming in the door and the old loyal ones are heading out the back door just as quickly. Lots of stats out there about cost of acquisition versus cost of retention. We're not going to get into those, but just in terms of wrapping up, customer engagement, wonderful opportunity for today's marketers. There are those that are doing it well. Unfortunately, they are in the minority, but the opportunity, therefore, is greater. Profitability, we welcome that. Everything we do in marketing should be measured. And then, last but not least, as we move into the social responsibility phase, I guess, Penny, in my various conversations with you, it's not rushing it. It's really getting that alignment right, getting that authenticity right, understanding what causes align with the nature of the business you're in, and identifying those and dealing with those carefully and with authenticity. There's lots and lots of causes that cover every single category out there. How do we as marketers bring those causes into alignment with our business? And I think millennials today are vitally aware of those that are walking the walk versus those that are talking the walk. But hopefully, as we move into 2024, those that stand out, I mean, certainly we spoke about the fact that product and price need to at least be comparable. I think, Adam, a loyalty program, as you pointed out, where the product and price is inferior, is going to be an uphill battle. But there are a lot of organizations that have comparative products and prices, that point of difference, that point of loyalty, Adam, could be something worth putting onto the agenda. And so, friends or frenemies? I think more friends than frenemies.
I think they're friends when they support each other. When they've got clashing goals or aspirations,
yes,
maybe not.
Yes. I'd never, as I said right at the get-go, I'd never heard this term frenemies before, but I think it's really quite an interesting term. But I think in terms of standing out from the crowd and really differentiating, which is an increasing challenge out there, having a social purpose and doing that in a way that resonates, doing the research, doing the homework, checking in that what might be what might resonate in the USA might be entirely different. What might resonate in New South Wales might be very different to that which achieves that cut through in other areas of the country. But being in touch with your customer, understanding what makes them tick, I think that is the key. And that data that we spoke about, being receptive and having processes in place to understand the customer, I think is key. Folks, we're just about on midday.
Yes, I have to head off, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Brian.
Thank
you, Penny. It's been a really great conversation. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. And stay safe in the lead up to Christmas and the New Year.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, Penny.
Penny.
Thanks, Adam.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.